"Rob?" she called again, hearing a waver in her voice. When the figure did not answer a second time, she willed herself to move. Her feet were numb with fear, but she forced herself forward. As she approached, she became more and more convinced that she had imagined the figure, that what she had mistaken for a man was simply a shadow from the locker bank. Then suddenly it moved, turning on its heel and disappearing around the corner. She froze in her tracks. Her heartbeat once again began pumping faster as her adrenal glands dumped a new batch of adrenaline into her bloodstream. She made up her mind before she even knew what she was doing. She would not let her fear control her. She would not go back to the lounge and cower like a child under her blanket. She had to know what she had seen. Her hands and face growing numb, and her legs feeling like they dragged lead weights, she followed the phantom. Around the next corner, the hall was empty, but she could faintly hear the echo of footfalls somewhere up ahead. She pushed herself into a jog to make up for the lost distance. Rounding another bend, she found herself in front of a set of bathrooms. The footfalls had disappeared. She padded to a stop, looking down the long corridor. If there was someone there, shouldn't they still be visible? Is it possible that she had imagined the entire thing? The feeling of being watched returned. Eyes full of malice glared at her from the darkness of uncertainty. The hallway back suddenly felt like a gauntlet of fear and humiliation. What would the others think if she made it back and broke down under her blanket, blubbering like a child? She didn't want to be here. She wanted to be home. She wanted to be in Henry's warm, muscular arms. She put her back to the wall, slid to a sitting position, and dissolved into tears. Rob stared into the bathroom mirror. Part of him didn't want to accept that what he was seeing was even his own face. The sadness had him now, and he had to admit, it had him by the balls. He looked down at his rapidly diminishing bag of powder, then back at his own face. His eyes looked hollow and dead. His skin looked rough and pockmarked. "This is why the dead are grateful, Jerry," he told his reflection. He knew his habit had grown from a weekend recreation into that after-school special-style monster that destroys lives. God, this felt like shit. He hung his head and turned it from side to side, feeling his neck crack. He turned on the cold water and put his balled fists into the flow. It felt real as it trailed over his knuckles. It felt too real. He was too aware, and the world was wrong. He was wrong. He took a deep breath. He knew he was going to have to take some more to get right. I don't need enough to get real high, he thought. Just enough to get right. He spilled a measure of cocaine onto the webbing between his forefinger and thumb, lifted it to his nose, and inhaled it. It hardly even burned anymore. It rolled over him at once, lifting the veil inside his head. His heart raced, and the edge dulled. He felt right again, but he knew he was still wrong. That this feeling of elation was the real lie. Maybe he could get help, but then what? New friends? A whole new life? Was that even possible? He held the baggie up before his eyes. There wasn't a lot left. Enough to get him through the weekend, maybe. He would need to call Rennie early again this week. He splashed some water on his face and turned off the faucet, running his fingers through his hair. With the sound of running water gone, he could hear something else from outside the bathroom. It sounded like a woman crying. He twisted the baggie shut and shoved it in his pocket, then pushed his way out of the bathroom door. Annie sat there, propped against the opposite wall, her arms hugging her knees to her chest. She was crying loudly and shaking. "Annie?" he said, and rushed over to her. She looked up, embarrassed, and sniffled, trying to wipe the tears off of her reddened cheeks. Her curly, wet bangs stuck to her face like spider webs. "What's wrong?" he asked her. "Nothing," she replied hastily. "I'm okay. I just... You don't look okay." "Seriously, I'm not going to rag on you or anything. Tell me what happened." "It's stupid," she said. "I just had a nightmare." He nodded and sat down beside her, giving her a moment to catch her breath and composure. "Tell me about it." "There was a fire, the one that killed my parents and kid brother." "Do you get them a lot?" he asked. "Too often," she said. He let the moment swell, not quite sure how to comfort her. "I came looking for you, when I noticed you were out of bed too," she said finally. "I saw you in the hallway. Why didn't you answer me when I called out to you?" He looked surprised. "I guess I didn't hear you. Are you sure it was me?" "Who else could it have been?" she asked. "Everyone else is still asleep?" he asked. "Yeah," she said. "But honestly, it was really dark. I guess I could have imagined it. I was really upset because of the nightmare." "Probably," he said, getting to his feet and offering her a hand to help her to her feet. "Then again," he trailed off. "What?" she asked seriously as he helped her to her feet. "Nothing. Don't worry about it. I don't want to worry you." "Now, come on. Now you have to tell me. Seriously," she said. Her tone was playful, but it only thinly veiled the fear that shone in her every mannerism. "It's no big deal. I just thought there's a possibility it could have been someone else. Like a squatter, some homeless guy or something, taking shelter from the blizzard. Nothing to worry about, really, especially if we stay in a group." She didn't look convinced. "That's why I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to worry you. It's just a possibility is all. I'll walk back with you. Promise. I won't leave your side." "Okay," she said. "I'm just glad you didn't try to convince me that it was some mad ghost or something." "Not my style," he smiled. "I'll leave the ghost stories to Anton." "Do you believe in all that stuff?" she asked. "I'll keep your secret if you keep mine," he declared. She figured he must mean about her crying. "Deal," she agreed. "Scares the shit out of me," he said it with a grin. She beamed at him. He pulled a flashlight out of his pocket and turned it on. "Here," he said. "This'll keep the dark off us. Let's walk back." She nodded and took his hand. In the short time that she had known Rob, she'd only known him to be immature and lascivious. She was pleasantly surprised to find this more sympathetic side to him. He wore it well. They walked back using a different corridor of Rob's choosing. Annie noted that if Rob had come from this direction in the first place, then there was no way that the shadowy figure she had seen could have been him. Regardless, the school was much less foreboding with the big man at her side. They were almost back to the lounge when she noticed something strange up ahead. Down the hall and to the left, a door was standing open. "That's weird," he said. "I'm guessing that wasn't open when you came by the last time?" she mused, making it more of a fact than a question. "Yeah. In fact, I'm almost sure I shut it myself earlier tonight. It leads to the basement." She thought for a moment about the eerie feeling Henry had described to her when he explored the ruins as a teenager. "You think your squatter could be down there?" she asked. "Could be," he conceded with a shrug. "Only one way to find out for sure. We should definitely check into it. But let me go wake up Anton and Steve first, in case there is some sort of trouble." She felt frightened, but she promised herself she wasn't going to let her fear resurface. Having Rob there made all the difference. And it probably was just some old drifter. She screwed her courage on tight and squeezed his hand in an affirming way. "Let's go down and check it out. I'll be here to protect you." He smiled at her. "You got spunk, lady," he said, and they went through the door. You've been listening to Ambuscade, Book 1 of The Pain Chaser, written and performed by Patrick E. Malloy. If you like what you've heard, you can buy your own copy of the book at www.patrickemaloy.com. That's Patrick, the letter E, Molloy. All music for this production was written and performed by Raymond Jelly. And I'd also like to personally thank fellow writer-podcaster Nathan Lowell for all his help in getting this production started. Until next time.